You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.
And welcome to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community. As always, I am Ben Wolf, the host of this show. And we are going to learn from our guest today how tech-reliant and tech product companies can get to the next level with an experienced fractional technology executive, even if they cannot afford one full-time. Before we get into the content today, I do want to remind everybody that it would be a big help to this show, to me, and to other people out there. They'll get the content more readily available to more people by clicking like or subscribe or follow on this channel, follow it. Different names on each different platform, but whether it's YouTube or Apple Podcasts, leave a review, a 5-star review, preferably with words, a description even of what value you get from the show. It'll make it more available to other people and would mean a lot to me. So thank you. And especially if you're getting value from the guests and the information and the knowledge that we are sharing on this show for the entrepreneurial community, for business owners. And with that, I want to get into introducing our guest today, who I'm very proud that we're having him. He is the CEO of Fortium Partners, F-O-R-T-I-U-M, Fortium Partners, which is the largest provider of fractional technology officer, CTO, chief information officer, CIO, and CISO or CISO, chief information and security officers around the world. He has many years experience, even before this, as a chief technology officer at multiple organizations, both on an in-house and an outsourced basis. You can find out more about him and his company at FortiumPartners.com. That's F-O-R-T-I-U-M partners.com. And with that, I give you Burke Autrey. And I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your last name. How do I pronounce that?
It is Autrey. Yeah, Autrey. Yep. Yeah, okay. Autrey. Just usually welcome. Fortium is the hard one to pronounce, but yes, it's Autrey. But thank you for having me, Ben. I appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. I'm very happy to be able to have you on. And like I ask most people, if I could just ask you to start with this, just, stuff that's maybe not on your LinkedIn profile or your official resume, what would you say are the, just if you can give a quick 2-minute background into where you came from and how that brings you to where you are today?
Yeah, appreciate that. It's a good story. So I started out in consulting. So big four consulting, wasn't big four at the time, but started out in big four consulting, technology consulting, working with companies. And just as I got a little bit older, got married, had kids, realized that the consulting lifestyle, the being on the road all the time was not the best, not the most conducive to raising a family. So I went into technology leadership as a CIO, director of IT and CIO. But that consulting experience really stuck with me, and realized that the two worlds for small companies, medium-sized companies together can make a real difference. In other words, a CIO that approaches a company like a consultant, meaning with an opportunity to see what's not working, fix those problems, make the company better, and then ultimately move on. That is essentially what happens in many technology businesses. So from that, I realized this outsourced way, or what we call a fractional or interim CIO, was just something that I had wanted to start. So I became, what we'll talk about a little bit later, what we call the single shingle approach. But I was an independent fractional and interim CIO and CTO. Eventually ran across an organization while I was trying to figure out as an entrepreneur how to scale that model. Ran across an organization named Tatum, T-A-T-U-M, that was kind of a precursor to our business. And so Fortium really is version 2 of that Tatum technology leadership practice after Tatum was acquired. Many of us from that practice came over to Fortium back in 2014. And so really the launch of Fortium was the culmination of all of that experience, both doing it on my own and helping start that practice at Tatum, and then growing that up to about 150 technology leaders there. And now we're at Fortium, 6 years into it. We have a little over 100 technology leaders in this. So that's that is really the culmination of a lot of years of being in this business.
Well, yeah, I hear. I mean, it's obviously a huge practice, a huge thing that you've built there. I guess, which, especially for those who are not from a primarily technology background,
Mm-hmm.
we use a lot of terms, and I use them in your introduction with CIO, CTO, CISO, CISO. What are these things? What are these three things? What are the differences between them? I mean, we'll get to, obviously I'll have more follow-up questions after that, but what are the basic differences between those three terms, and how and when do we use those terms?
Yeah, it's a great question, because there's a lot of confusion in the industry. We run into it a lot of times. People use those terms interchangeably a lot.
Yeah.
And I think
just personally, not knowing much about it. So I'm glad, another reason I'm glad we're talking.
Yeah, hopefully after this one, maybe you'll have a different way of describing it. So we run into that a lot. We feel like the industry is often the definition of those terms is often sort of delivered by consulting magazines, search firms, and so forth. And so we feel like there really is a need for a voice in the industry to be kind of the authoritative place. And with 100 technology leaders and a huge community around us of other technology leaders that we know, we feel like it's important to define those things. And so to your point exactly, the CIO, CTO, CISO is really a triad of technology leadership. So when we say technology leadership as a bundle or as an umbrella, technology leaders make up those three separate sections. The CIO, CTO, CISO, we call operate, innovate, and secure. So the CIO is most often working for a company that is primarily a buyer of technologies. So perhaps many of the entrepreneurs who listen to your podcast are entrepreneurs that are not software companies, or they're not selling mostly, technology.
Probably.
Yeah, if that's the case, so most of them, if they have a technology leader at all, it would fit into the CIO category. And the CIO is primarily primarily overseeing operational or buying of technology and solving company or enterprise problems with the technology. Not that they're not strategic. Certainly, the larger the company, the more strategic they become. But primarily, they're not building technology. They're certainly not selling technology.
Right.
That's where the CTO comes in. If you switch over to the kind of company that's primarily selling technology, most of their revenue is coming from the sale of technology. The technology leader in that company is generally going to be a CTO, Chief Technology Officer. The Chief Technology Officer is well-versed in product management, product development, security, DevOps, hosting products that are for sale. And typically the buyer or the counterpart of a CTO is the CIO at their customer, right? At their customer site. So the two really work well together. And then the CISO, when security and risk and all of that, certainly on the seller of technology side, there's a lot of security risk that they have to oversee. But both sides can benefit from the CISO, which is going to be managing the cybersecurity piece of it, the policies, procedures, controls, risk management, all of that side. So the three faces: operate on the CIO, innovate from the CTO, and secure on the CISO side are primarily how we describe that. Now, quite often you have one individual in a small company doing all three of those things. If you are buying technology, or if you happen to make some technology, or you do a little bit of investment in technology, sometimes that skill set falls within the CTO most likely. But as you grow, and the beautiful thing about fractional leadership is that you're able to have maybe a fraction of a CIO, 2 days a week of a CIO, half a day a month of a CISO, and maybe even less of a CTO if you're not.
A combination. Interesting.
So, yeah, right. Because sometimes those individuals are better. The individuals who focus on one of those areas, and some of them are extremely talented. But when you
as opposed to a multifunction person.
Yeah. That's right. Now, not to say that there aren't a lot of CIOs and CTOs that kind of do both, but the ones that really focus on their craft are really good at one of those three roles.
Now that's really interesting. It makes me think of one other situation. I think I know what you're going to say, but what about this situation where where an organization is a developer of technology, but they don't sell it to anyone. They just use it to deliver their service. They provide a service to someone. They use it. They deliver that service through proprietary technology, which they develop themselves internally. Right. So is that more of a CTO thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, so I would just call that a technology-enabled company. So in other words, their revenue still comes from the provision of a service. It just happens that service is very technology-led. If it all depends. Yes, they can probably benefit from a CTO skill set, and oftentimes a CIO will do that. But the CTO skill set is really about architecture, product development, and building that.
Right.
The key thing,
and for this kind of company, that is what they do. I mean, that is what they do.
That's right. Yeah. And oftentimes that kind of company doesn't have to have quite the rigor that a software company would, because they're not holding people's data. People are not relying on them for a critical function oftentimes that's embedded in their workflow. When that happens, the CTO is usually a little bit more well-versed on those subjects.
Right. Okay, well, it's certainly a little enlightening, especially just to give more context to this. Mm-hmm. And I guess the next thing I'm wondering is, whether it's full-time, whether it's fractional, like what size organizations require do they become big enough where it requires fractional on one hand or full-time on the other? But like, what size are they that's reasonable or justified that's needed?
So that it's a great question, and it's a difficult one to answer, because whether you in the traditional metrics that we use, number of employees, revenue, those are very dependent on the industry and just the stage of the company. I would say, maybe just to make it simple, the solopreneur, the solo entrepreneur, probably a little too early for that, though sometimes they can benefit from, we've had solopreneurs that are building a software company and they don't have any employees yet, and they just need to make the right decisions about the direction they take. And
or so maybe all their development is outsourced.
That's right.
But you could still have the CTO part, kind of leading the outsourced development.
We've got examples of that happening right now, where the CEO is primarily not a technology person, but has a great idea. They're building a software company. They've outsourced the development, and having a CTO in there even 1 hour a week, can help them.
Do you have options like that? An hour a week for your within?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna describe. Kind of so the good news is, I'll compare the traditional model. The traditional model is that. Is one of a full-time hire, right? And so clearly, if you're a small company, oftentimes you're not going to be able to afford or attract the kind of technology leader,
unless it's a partner,
larger company with it. That's right. Yeah, something like that. So the model that we have, it's an alternative model to the search model or the full-time employment. It means instead of compromising on the level of experience that you need, compromise on the amount of time, and the amount of time that a truly experienced technology leader needs to make an impact on the organization is in fact a fraction of the time that maybe someone with less experience might have on a full-time basis. So so it makes a lot of sense. But we, in order to solve this problem for companies of all sizes, we do scale down our offerings. We have virtual offerings at the low end of the scale. We typically call those 1, 2, or 4 hours a week. We have 3 models that, and so you literally can get started at an hour a week, which is half day a month. And then we go up into fractional offering. If you get past 4 hours a week, you get into about a day and a half a week. And we have offerings, each one of those, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4 days a week. And then we get into some full-time offerings as well. And you can see a larger company is obviously going to scale towards the higher end of that, and smaller companies can still benefit from a smaller footprint, a little bit less engagement, but still have a huge impact on their business.
Right. I mean, and I'm wondering also, there's another tool that you talk about at Fortium. I just want to understand this, or when business owners might want to use something like this. But what is technology leadership as a service? TLAAS, right? It's not SaaS, it's TLAS. So technology leadership TLAS. As a service, TLAS. Okay, sorry. So what is that, I guess, as distinct from fractional technology
Right.
leadership.
Yeah, it really, because we do more than fractional. Sometimes we do interim, which is full-time. Sometimes we do very fractional, which is that 1 or 2 hours a week that we call virtual. We needed to have a single concept that covers all of that. The key thing is that compared to a full-time W-2, 40 hours a week type of a role, a bit like the cloud environment, being able to access leadership that you need as a service, as opposed to as an employee, gives a lot of options. As one of your guests talked about recently, you take a lot of the downsides of employment, long-term commitment, possibly making the wrong hire. You don't have those. You don't have those when you buy as a service. Just like you're buying cloud as a service, you try it out. If it works, you keep it. You keep buying it. You upscale over time, or scale up over time, scale down over time. That's our model, is like a cloud offering for leadership. So we're able.
What percentage of the clients though are having just one person that you're providing to them, whether it's 4 hours a week?
Yes, the majority are going to have the one. Okay. So I did mention the possibility.
That was the only confusing thing to me about as a service, because I was thinking, well, then you're not connected to a specific person. So
you are. There's always a specific person. There's kind of a lead person, whether it's a CIO or CTO. But we like to say it starts with a person, but it doesn't stop there. Right? You have the entire firm behind you. And we're able to offer that in something less than 40 hours a week, which generally causes people to go down on the experience, and because most people work full-time jobs, right? So, but yeah, so usually so it is. There are times that we don't compromise on the experience, just compromise on the commitment of time, and that allows it to be affordable. But yes, you're right. Usually there's one person, about 90% of the time in our engagements, there's one person as the point person for them.
And do you have a method so that they, if they come up with an issue with their client, they're working with them 4 hours a week or 8 hours a week, right? And they come up with issues maybe that they haven't come across before. Do you have a forum where your fractional leaders can kind of learn from and teach each other about their issues? Did you have anything like that?
Sure, we do. Yeah, and then I think that's one of the benefits of being a firm, right? Being a larger firm with multiple people. So we've got over 100 technology leaders. The combined experience is just fantastic. I mean, it's and so we do have a forum internally. It's software that we use to reach out to our partners. Sometimes it's informal too. They'll reach out to the people they know, especially those that have been. We often also specify on our engagements, while there's a single person on the engagement, say the CIO on the engagement, we also staff that with what we call an advisory team that is not billed to the client and doesn't give a committed amount of time. But typically that could be 3 people. One might be a CISO, one might be a CTO, and there also might be someone from the industry of the client that can oversee that. So that CIO has an immediate access to a smaller team that is helping on the engagement. That's sort of a phone call away or a chat away. And then we have managing partners. There are people that are overseeing that. There's a managing partner that they go to as well. And then we have the full firm behind us whenever we need that. So it's a tremendous resource, and one of the major differentiators of being a larger firm.
Right. And how does, I guess one thing also, how do you define the deliverables or outcomes that you're giving to your clients, or that your fractional leaders are giving to your clients? How are those deliverables outcomes usually defined?
So we like to say that we deliver our service in a couple of ways. So one is the role, the other is an outcome. So generally, when you're sitting in a seat, right, you're taking on the responsibility for the function, meaning you control the budget, you control the people, you hire and fire, and you sit on the executive team and you help make decisions. We do that a lot. That's a role, and we typically don't define in advance what the deliverables are, because most people understand you sit in the seat, you do
it's
the
an
job,
ongoing basis type of stuff.
Right. It's an ongoing thing. So we're going to do whatever's necessary. Now, we do have an approach that we take, even with all of our clients as a full-time person, but that's kind of, how do you be a great CIO, and what sort of approach do you take, right? and that involves a lot of what we just talked about, having the firm behind you, having a managing partner overseeing that, and so forth. When we're working for an outcome, typically that outcome is an opinion about something, which we do a lot of due diligence for. Due diligence for private equity, due diligence for on the sell side for companies looking to sell. We do a lot of that to help them to identify where the potential weaknesses are in that. So, or a company just might want an assessment to say, hey, where are we strong? Where are we weak? That's typically an outcome, and we do define that. That is a clear deliverable. It's a methodology that we have as an assessment tool, and we have an outcome or a deliverable that we can actually share with the client as a potential. And then the other way that an outcome is typically when something's in trouble. You've got a large implementation or that's in trouble, or you've got maybe a company that's being spin out and the full-time CIO doesn't have time to focus on that. So it's really, or maybe you're consolidating 5 data centers down to 2, something like that. That's an outcome that we call it situational leadership, where you're going to put the leadership of a CIO, CTO, or CISO into a situation where they're not really in the role, but they're using the skill sets of the role to make that outcome happen. So we typically just call that leadership. We call that that kind of leadership over that initiative.
Right, like a project. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a project. We like to call it sort of an outcome-based solution with a leadership person over it. So yeah.
Right. Okay. No, it's very helpful. I think it would also be awesome if you could share any like stories or examples, where situations you're able to come in or help, or where you were able to help transition over to somebody full-time afterwards, or give any examples. I mean, if you need time to think, we could come back to it.
Yeah, no, we got hundreds of examples.
I'm sure.
So it's good. It is interesting. I was just talking with the CEO of a healthcare company today as a prospect, and so I was able to tell him, relay a situation we had in the same industry, in a very similar situation, where in this particular case we had 2 partners engaged. One was very heavily entrenched in the industry, happens to be in the healthcare.
When you say partners, you're referring to the fractional leaders?
My partners. Yeah,
right, okay.
We're a partnership. I didn't mention that, but we're a partnership. All of those 100 individuals are owners and partners, limited partners in our firm, right? So we're all going to market together as owners. And so we were able to deploy, in this particular case, 2 partners. One was significant experience in the biotech space, and so knew the business really well as a CIO, and so was working on that side. We actually deployed also a CTO because they had some interesting challenges with a system that they were implementing, and it required, in this case, just a more technical outcome. So the 2 of them sort of tag teamed that. The goal was to get through a significant upgrade or significant implementation, meet some deadlines that they had in their industry for compliance that they had to have in a regulated industry. So that was the true value of what we delivered. And then we were able to recruit, interview, and hire a CIO for them, a long-term CIO, and then we leave. So significant value to get a company from where it was to where it needed to be. And then oftentimes we find ourselves in the position of helping them hire their full-time person, which is it may not seem like it's that we would be involved in something like that, but I firmly believe that sometimes a CIO is the best person to help a company find a CIO, because they've done the job. They understand the pros and cons of that. Yeah. So
absolutely, it makes sense to me. I mean, I'm a fractional integrator, working with EOS companies, kind of like an outsourced COO for those not familiar with the term, but it's certainly the same thing. I'm involved in helping advise on job description, on interviewing, permanent replacements for myself, where I'm sitting in the seat on an interim basis, so that they have the benefit of somebody who's experienced in that role. But it makes perfect sense to me, why you as a fractional, or you or one of your people as a fractional leader would be would be helping with that. That seems like that's the biggest success that you could have is
We stay as long as is necessary, right? We one of the hallmarks of our model is we're easy to engage, very quick. We can be there, in some cases we're there tomorrow. And it's happened. It's been a little bit stressful, but it has happened. And then, or typically within a week or two if necessary, or as long as it takes to get everything worked out. But then we're there as long as needed, right? We're only there as much as needed and as long as needed. And there's a lot of value to that. There's we like to say access over ownership, right? You don't own the person, you just access the part of the person that you need for as long as you need, the experience that you want. So yeah,
right.
You're doing the same thing in the COO space. That's great.
Yeah. Are you able to talk at all about, I guess, cost of I don't know if you feel comfortable with that. You can tell me if you're not, but like cost of fractional technology leadership.
Sure. Yeah.
So the people have a universe, I don't know. I'm a fact finder on the Colby scale. I like to, I don't know, I perhaps it's projection, but I imagine people want to get their head around, just what's involved.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and in professional services in general, people don't like to talk about that. They don't have that on the website. But I'll tell you, the way we price is very similar to what you would find in the market. In other words, if you were going to hire a person at the skill level that we've got, we take that person, and there's a bit of a premium for that because you're basically slicing up that person's time, and so they have downtime in between, right? But you're not paying the full price; you're paying a portion of the price.
Right. Plus there's risk. Plus there's risk on your part on not being fully booked.
That's right. Yeah. So all of our partners take on that risk of not being fully booked, and so there is a bit of a premium over that. But what we do is we take the fully burdened cost of an individual. And it depends on the area of the country, right? In some areas that's a little bit more than others. But if you take a CIO or CTO or CISO and you look at like a $250,000 to $300,000 salary, you gross that up with benefits and all of the rest of it, it can be pretty significant. It can get up into the 350 range, something like that. Yeah. That's not the case for small companies. I understand that, but a fraction of that is what you want. You want a piece of that person at a rate that you can afford. So. Believe it or not, on the virtual side, the 1, 2, 4 hours a week, we start as low as $1,500 a month.
Oh, wow.
And that's for about 1 hour per week. And the reason we do that is because there are a lot of companies out there who really just need the mentoring or just need the advisory, someone to look over their shoulders. There might be a CIO out there or a CEO out there that has a security concern and they want someone just to be able to call them in. We have great references to companies that utilize our partners in that way. And it's a tremendous value. And as you can tell, it's very affordable. That goes up throughout the time. If you want more time, it goes up. At the top of the scale of that, we get into the fractional leadership. Typically, a typical rate, just to sort of set things, just to sort of set a standard, is about $2,000 to $2,500 a day. And that changes depending on how long the commitment is and how much time there is. And obviously, is this a nonprofit, is this a small company or something like that? We make exceptions for that because sometimes companies need that, right? Our goal is to help as many people as we can in technology. So we're certainly willing to do that. But if you sort of start with that and go up, it can be, it can be significant, but also the value that's delivered can be significant as well. Right. So fractionally, if you think a day a week, probably somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 a day. And
so it's like 8,000 to 10,000 a month, let's say.
That's right.
Like that.
That's right. And you have to, what I tell clients a lot or prospects a lot is don't do the math. Don't try to figure out what that is on an annual basis because you're not paying for an annual basis. You're only paying for a portion of that person's time. The fallacy of saying, well, gosh, if I'm going to spend that much, I might as well go get a full-time person to do it.
Right.
It's not, the math is not right. You're not getting the same level of experience.
Right. I mean, if you're paying 100, even if you're paying 10,000 a month, 120 a year, I mean, who are you getting for 120 a year as a CTO relative to, to what you're getting? And it may not last that long or go back to fewer hours. And
that's right. Yeah.
Don't have all the benefits and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like any fractional leadership. So that's really helpful.
Hopefully I'm one of the few people that'll go out on a limb and tell you the pricing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I think, I have a similar attitude to that. I talk about that. I think I even put pricing on my website. because I don't want people to like waste their time calling me or reaching out if it's not relevant for them. And I value their time and my own time too much to do that, and just let it be, realistic.
That's right. No, I think that's a great way to think about it.
And I'm very into transparency and just being open and honest, and just got to get stuff out of the way and not drag things out. But last question. I know we've kept you for a while, but the last thing I was thinking about asking is this question that we've previously talked about, which is organizational fractional leadership provider like yourself, like Fortium partners, versus independent like you've previously done, like I'm currently doing. That what do you see as the advantages or disadvantages, and part of that being, actually I'm curious to see if you would have any situations, because I'm sure you prefer the organizational and you think the benefits generally outweigh, but are there any kinds of clients or situations where an independent provider would be a good solution? But yes, that's the last thing I want to ask you about.
No, it's a great question.
And organizational.
Yeah. So in running Fortium, I've talked to close to 1,700 technology leaders, right? Just as people explore our model, many of them independent providers doing this work or considering doing that, right? And I've answered this question probably hundreds of times now, that if you're doing that and it's working for you, more power to you. Keep doing it, right? Because if you're doing that and being successful, it means that you have certain characteristics as an entrepreneur that allow you to be both a seller and a doer, right? And there's a lot to it. There's a website to be put up. There's marketing material. There's a brand that has to be set. All of that stuff. If you're good at that, and and you want to do those parts, I enjoyed some of that myself. Some of those parts. However, but if you can't, it's often better to join a firm that's doing all of that for you, right? You're going to mitigate some of the risk of that downtime by joining a firm that has a business development function, that has a marketing function, that is taking care of legal and financial stuff in the background, taxes, and all of the stuff that you would have to do on your own, billing clients and accepting and paying people out. A larger firm like ours just does all of that in the background. And there's a significant amount of time that we spend on the finance and tax and legal side and keeping track of all the stuff we need to do there. There's also the benefit of the internal benefit of being part of a team. I find that a lot of executives that have been in the business for 20 years, they've always been part of a team. They don't really want to be out on their own, running their own business, and have kind of headquarters be their office, right? Their home office. Some of them just feel there's a psychological effect that happens when you've been in a company for 20 years and you want to go out and do this. When you're looking for business, it feels a little bit like you're out of work. And for many of us, feeling out of work is not, it's not a good feeling. And if you're an entrepreneur, you take that, you sort of bundle that up and use that energy to go find business. And I think that's good. Some people want to join a firm that's larger, where they have a team, they're part of a team, they have people above them and next to them that can help them, especially when they want to start a new engagement. And how do we do this? And what tools do we have? What methodologies do we have? There's a significant advantage there, both to the client, I think, and to our partner, to the individual that's delivering the service. There are a couple of individuals that we know of that are doing independent, who we've recruited but have chosen to stay independent, and we think that's great because they do great work for their clients. We trust them. We know they're going to do great work. If there's something we can't do, we're happy to send it to them. But they also send us clients, and they send us candidates as well, because they know that not everybody is cut out to do it independently. Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of advantages to, I think, to being part of a larger team. I generally say to people, look, if this is what you want to do, there's no better place to do it in the technology leadership space than Fortium, because it is our business. We think about technology leadership a lot. And so we think that. But if you want to stay on your own, we're still friends. We're for you in the marketplace. We think you help validate our space as a business, and we're happy to share that space with you.
Right. I mean, that's really cool. I mean, I could see the value in as a client in having your fractional leader, whoever is working in your company, not also splitting their time and attention between you and business development. Which I could see the value in that. And another really interesting, I guess, point that what you're saying makes me think of is this aspect that, as an EOS implementer, as an EOS integrator, a lot of what I give thought to is, how do you define the right seats and roles in an organization? What's the right structure for organization, and ensuring that everybody that's in a role, that's in a seat in an organization is the right person. They have the right core values, they fit like a glove, and they're also in the right seat, meaning that they want, and have the capacity to do their job really well. And if you're independent, as you pointed out earlier, part of your role, like it or not, is business development. And so if you don't GWC, if you don't get one and have the capacity for the business development side of it, then you're not going to succeed in your business on the substantive side either. And that's really sad, and doesn't make a lot of sense in a way, because, if I'm a great CIO or a great COO or CMO on a fractional basis, and I could serve clients wonderfully, but my business fails, or at least I have to go work for someone else because, because I don't get one and have the capacity to do well the BD side, the business development part. It's just those two skill sets are so unrelated. Like, why should you have to be good at BD to be a good CIO?
Yeah, you're not. And we typically, we find that, believe it or not, some of them are great at that. Our managing partners tend to be those that have excelled from doing the work to selling and managing the work. Everybody in our firm is a technology leader first, and a business person first, and everything else second. But I will say that we mitigate that risk. We mitigate a lot of the risks that you're talking about of doing it on your own. So
right. It's definitely an argument for this type of model.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, look, Burke, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. I think it was very enlightening for people. I think it's the first CIO. You're the first CIO or CIO leader that we've had on here. So I'm glad to finally address this topic of technology and technology leadership, especially on a fractional basis. Thank you. And so I think it's very enlightening to understand, that CTO, and novel development, and CIO, kind of more management of technology, and CISO, that kind of combination or security concern, and all the other context you gave us, I really, really appreciate.
Great. I can tell you were listening. That's fantastic. I
Absolutely.
appreciate being here, and I appreciate what you're doing for the entrepreneurial and for the fractional community. I think it's a great thing, and I really appreciate you being part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, appreciate you coming on, and we'll see everybody else on the other side. Thank you.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolf.